Herg, erg. Not again. Not again, not again. Not again. Well then, Mr. Natsume. It would appear you're going to have to accompany me down to the yard. Again. But wait! Hold your horses! Yes? Door! Key! Locked! Entry! Exit! Entirely impossible! He's so flustered that he's being even stranger than normal. What, you think that's an alibi? You could have just made a copy. Whoa! You live in the same building after all. You'd have plenty of opportunity, I'm sure. But misery me! Sorry, sir. You'll get your chance to give your side of the story later. The facts speak for themselves, Mr. Mustache. Arg! You horrible Herlock Sholmes! He really has found himself an arch-rival now, hasn't he? Come on now, no dilly-dallying. Outside, there's a carriage waiting. Locum student, Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. I never imagined I'd be in this position again, but... You have to help me, please! Please! I'm innocent! Alright, I understand. We'll come to your cell later and talk about it. And one more thing. Oh, yes? My poor little kitty cat. Please give him his breakfast for me. Alright. But it'll cost you. And so, his evil curse still apparently unbroken, so Seki-san found himself once again the prime suspect in a case of murder. Wait a minute, the last case wasn't a prime suspect in a case of murder, the person lived. Thanks to the incriminating deduction of this great detective. My dear fellow, that honor belongs to you. Well, he hasn't hired me yet. He hasn't paid me. He also didn't pay me for last time, so I owe him one guilty verdict. That's how that works. Well, at least that means Inspector Gregson is no longer here. We can examine the crime scene in more detail now. Yes, that's right. Ah, and of course... What? Have you forgotten what the inspector mentioned before? It was the landlord, Mr. Garadeb, who discovered Mr. Shamspear. Oh, Mr. John Garadeb, yes. I expect we could find him in his sitting room on the top floor as usual. Right, we must remember to go talk to him later then. Alright, well, there's the real murderer. What is that? What's this? It looks like part of an envelope, I think. Yes, I think you may be right. Perhaps it was torn off when the letter was opened. Is that significant? Well, it's a little out of place, perhaps. When you look around the room, there's no sign of a letter or the rest of the envelope, in fact, is there? Well, she's right. And yet here we have the torn-off end of an envelope. It just strikes me as unusual. I agree. We'd better take this, just in case. I am unusually tired. Given that I slept until almost noon. But also I was up until like 6 a.m. basically. So I guess that does explain why I'm tired. And here we have another disproportionately large machine. This looks like a meter of some kind. Ah, this is a gas meter, I think. It seems that in this district, residents pay for gas as they use it, as with coins. I see. Yes, now you've pointed it out, I can see there's a slot just here that looks like it would take a coin. So you mean if you put a coin in here... That's right, that would buy you about 2 hours of gas for lights and heating. So if you were a poor person with no money, you'd have to sleep in the freezing cold? Yes, or if you were a scatterbrain with no change because you forgot to exchange your money at the bank. Thank goodness there's no meter in our office. This is some sort of makeshift stage, I think, isn't it? Where does the audience sit, though? For the nightly Shakespeare performances? Oh. Actors aspiring to the great stage must practice their art, Mr. Naruhodo, with or without an audience. In fact, on a related note, perhaps you should set up a mock bench for the defense in your office. What? Then you could practice your art every single day. No, it's not the same. You need... The only way to win in court is with beginner's luck. You have to be as unprepared as possible. Do not practice. Also, don't speak to your client beforehand. It's just bad luck. I'll think about it, if you promise to don a beard and play the role of a judge. Well, if that would help you achieve your goal. Yes, I have to see. You need a lot of practice. Is that why they call it a law practice? Not a window. Doesn't count. Doesn't count, taxman. As we've seen from the outside, the window is completely bricked up. A vestige of the former window tax that Britons had to pay. Strange things they used to tax in Great Britain. There's a whole Wikipedia page full of them. I mean, making people pay for the number of windows they had in a property. It's extraordinary. It's heartbreaking to think of the poor having to block up their windows just to afford an unaffordable tax. Well, how much was the tax? Was it more than the bricks? Bricks are expensive, probably. What is it, Miss Susato? Oh, if you look closely, a number of the bricks are loose. Oh, yes, it looks as though an amateur has broken out a few of them just here. Was it Mr. Shamspear who did it, I wonder? Being the lodger renting this room. Look at this, Mr. Naruhodo. On the outside, there's a little ledge. And there's something on it. What outside? It's so cold outside, you can feel it through this gap. It did snow all last night. It would be cold. More importantly, what is that on the ledge out there? Are those snow-covered lumps? It's more bars of soap. Soap? What are bars of soap doing lined up on a ledge outside the window? Being used to smuggle gold bars inside them, obviously. I have no idea. But the pair of them look rather charming like that. Still, it's very strange, isn't it? Bars of soap lined up outside the window. I think perhaps we should take one. There are two, after all. Oh dear, I suppose we could. Oh, what's this? Look here at this soap. Ah! Do you see? In the middle there, there's a patch that's a different color. Sort of transparent, but some sort of fancy design, I suppose. Only in Great Britain. It looks like the Hinomaru flag of Japan, doesn't it? How wonderful. It's a drop of blood! There's a drop of blood on the soap, just like in Ace Attorney Miles Edgeworth Investigations Case 5. It's probably a very expensive brand. Expensive? Then what's it doing in this ramshackle old room? And why did we say it was a cheap bar of soap? We just established how expensive it is. Bruh. There's not much on these shelves, is there? Just this wine glass and bottle and two hats, clearly, and a doily. And a spider web. But it's fake. Not a real spider web. And both of them are cracked. Yes, not much use, are they? What's the matter? Oh, I was just reminded of the Reaper, that's all. Prosecutor Lord Van Zeeks? Yes, he's so reckless with his wine glasses. He's so reckless with his wine glasses. I was thinking it's a waste and he should donate some to the needy. You can suggest it next time we meet. That was great. It caught me by surprise. Equally funny is that, oh, it's a shame because he could donate those wine glasses to the poor who are desperately in need of wine glasses, apparently. Look at these extravagant, bright costumes. Somehow they look out of place in this room with its grim, shady goings-on. This one looks like a king's attire. A king? Always dreamed of being a king. Oh, I think you'd be more suited to a feudal lord, a daimyo, or such like. With a Shawn Mage top hat? What? We're just all about making up words today. Not an English word. Fine. So it must be chonmage? I guess? I guess. I have guessed. Every Japanese man wishes he had a chonmage. Do they? Oh, you'd look wonderful with one, and you already have the sword. Can you imagine what would happen if I walked around the streets of London with a chonmage and a sword? I can imagine what would happen if you walked around a court of law with a sword. Oh, the poor man, so young to die. Do you suppose it was a very painful death, being poisoned as he was? I don't know. All we can do now is hope he'll be reborn to a better life. Yes, I suppose you're right. I wonder. Do you think that putting our hands together in a Japanese prayer will help a British soul? Do you think British people have souls in the first place? I guess, is the first question. Sorry? I made sure I had a reference at the ready for just such an occasion as this, actually. This book is entitled The Beginner's Guide to Praying for the Departed, the British way. I'll just reread it now. One moment. There's quite a spine on that book, isn't there? Alright, what else? What else is there to look at? The light? This is a gas wall light, isn't it? It must be connected to a gas pipe in the wall. Gas lights. A gas stove. London really is a city of gas. And now that I think about it, Mr. and Mrs. Garrideb had an open fire on the top floor, didn't they? Specifics about British soap laws and all the soap taxes. Oh yes, you're right. I don't recall seeing a gas stove up there. Well, I much prefer a real fire anyway. It's so much cozier. I don't think there's any... Oh, no. Still the teacup. One of the teacups that Mr. Shamspeare and his guest drank from last night. But don't go drinking from them, Mr. Naruhodo. There's bitter poison inside. Planning on drinking any. Don't worry. Anyway, the cups are both empty. That's true. So one was Mr. Shamspeare's, and the other must be the cup that Mr. Natsume was drinking from. So Seki-san wasn't poisoned, of course. Perhaps we should take these so we can examine them in more detail later. Oh, alright, that was important. Looks like you're having a good snoop around, eh? Inspector Gregson, back so soon? After I threw that little Japanese fellow in the clink, I went and reported this to the investigation division. In 5 minutes' time, this place will be cordoned off by the yard. Oh, I see. Well, we better be leaving then. Pay no attention to the teacups and soap and envelope fragment in my bulging pocket. Poor Mr. Natsume must be feeling very low, being back in a cell again so soon. I'm sure. Oh, hello. How are you? What's wrong, Mr. Naruhodo? Kya! Out! Out, brief candle, life's a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. I forget the rest. No, do I know the rest of that? Is there a rest of that, or was that the end? Out, out, brief candle. Life's a poor player that struts his Oh, I do know the rest of it. No, wait. I need to see it again. Out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale full of sound and fury, told by an idiot, signifying nothing. I think. Now, how soundeth the next part? I already told you. I just told you. I just told you what the next part is. Ah, there we go. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Indeed. Oh, happy day. Was freaking delayed double poison? Walking Dead! He's in the grave! He popped Living Dead, but then nobody benedictioned him. The fella isn't dead at all. I mean, he is now. What was that nonsense he was saying, though? Said Ryunosuke, the man. Words today? Yes, it was from William Shakespeare's Macbeth. Oh, wait a minute. Wait. So they have William Shakespeare and this isn't him? This is William Shamspeare? Okay. A soliloquy from Act 5, Scene 5. Shakespeare. That's also a very good point. Fortunately, there's a footnote in... There's a footnote in the book about how to read rights of the dead to British people that has the entire works of William Shakespeare in the footnote. So it was that the victim, Mr. William Shamspeare, came back to life. If the man had indeed been poisoned, it transpired that it hadn't killed him. He was taken by emergency carriage to a nearby hospital for treatment, and Inspector Gregson evicted us from the scene of the crime. Whatever that now was. I'm proud of myself for remembering Shakespeare. Macbeth, the soliloquy. Do I know any others? Maybe not. Whatever do you think will happen now? Good question. A strange situation for Mr. Natsume. Arrested for murder, but then the victim comes back to life. But we're not letting him out. I think perhaps the victim was never dead in the first place. It seems very likely that Mr. Shamspeare did consume poison, as we deduced. But was it an accident, attempted suicide, or attempted murder? Or was he just asleep? Like, why did we think he was dead? If he must have still been breathing. So all we know is that he existed in a room. That is the full extent of our knowledge about the crime. Until the truth can be established, I imagine the police will keep Mr. Natsume in custody, because, what the fuck are rights? I suppose so. Let's hope it doesn't come to anything more than a night in the cells. A cell night. It's like a fortnight, but only 1/14 as long. And you're in jail. Oh, what's this? What's that man doing over there? It looks like he's trying to see into Soseki-san's lodgings. Something wrong, Mr. Naruhodo? Excuse me, could we have a word? Ah. He buggered off. I feel sure that I've seen that man somewhere before. Where was it? I do too, but I don't remember. How's the soap doing? With the exception of the top floor where Mr. and Mrs. Garradeb live, all of the windows are bricked up. Yes, that's because of an old window tax that was charged on the number of windows a property had. In order to pay less tax, the poorer members of society filled in many of their windows. But the tax has since been abolished, hasn't it? So the windows could all be opened up again. Surely! Unfortunately, it would appear that the residents of this district can't afford to pay to have the work done. Yes, that is a sad state of affairs. Especially for people like poor Mr. Natsume, who have to live all cooped up in a windowless room. I suppose that's the price you pay for living in very cheap accommodation. It all seems rather pointless when you put it like that. Just get a bucket of acid. How much could a bucket of acid cost? There always seems to be a bicycle outside the Garrett residence. I read that bicycles are extremely popular all over Great Britain at the moment, in fact. Are they as popular as handsoms and whatever the other word was? Tribulan? That one seems very warped, though, especially the front wheel. Is that to make it more of a challenge to ride, do you think? No, I'm afraid that may be the result of the rider's incompetence. For the front wheel to be so badly warped, I'm afraid the rider may have been similarly afflicted. Then, there's a good chance Mr. Natsume has been practicing on this bicycle, I think. Oh dear. I fear you may be right. The Garrett household and Mr. Natsume's lodgings are in a prominent position there on the corner. Sometimes when I look at the building, I can't help feel that it's at a bit of a slant. It does rather look like it as though it would collapse in even the smallest earthquake, doesn't it? And isn't it supposed to be haunted as well? I know I have a hunch as to why Soseki-san has such a hunched back. Hands up. Why has someone built this snowman on some sort of pedestal, do you think? That's not a pedestal, Mr. Naruhodo. It's part of the snowman's body. Really? But it already has a perfectly good body. Well, it's true that British snowmen are usually made with 2 balls of snow. Perhaps this is a foreigner. Now we're looking at him as if he's strange. Poor man. I know how he feels. If anything, it's Japanese and British 2-ball snowmen that are the strange ones, isn't it? What? How did everyone else in the world invent 3-ball snowmen except for you guys? Why do you still use chopsticks? After all, real people do have 3... Okay. Real people do have 3 sections: head, torso, and legs. Do you ever think that perhaps you think about things too much? Try being a dum-dum like me. Alright, so perhaps we shall move now. My legs consider the largest ball. Here we are again on my own. Let's say the eccentric landlord's eccentric top-floor abode. We're here because Mr. Garradab's the one who discovered the incident this morning. Don't forget.
Ah, you chaps, eh?
Yes, good morning, sir.
Thank you for your cooperation in court yesterday.
It was quite a trial. As much for Mr. Garradab as anyone, really.
Came straight back here after all that business at the Bailey yesterday. Didn't expect to wake up to more bally nonsense this morning.
Why is the cannon wearing an apron? It was there last time. So I suppose that's where it belongs. I wonder if you wouldn't mind telling us exactly what happened, Mr. Garradab.
So I suppose you'd like to know all about that dead loss of an actor chap in the ground floor room.
Those were exactly Inspector Gregson's words, weren't they? We'll ask. There is a single apron drying on that enormous cannon-shaped clothes horse. No, Mr. Naruhodo, that's a real cannon. I knew that. I was just testing you.
Piece of history, that is. Seen plenty of action on the battlefield, I can tell you. Now, the old girl and I are just enjoying the peace and quiet of retirement together. And of course, she'd come in handy if the enemy had decided to launch an attack again.
Is there a war going on that I don't know about? It depends. What's the date? Because during some years, there was a war. See? I know history. Sure, Mr. Shamspear. The victim's name is Mr. Shamspear, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, William Shamspear took the ground floor room 3 months ago now.
And how would you describe him?
In a word, destitute.
Destitute?
Well, let's face it, the only redeeming feature of that room is the cheap rent. Anyone wanting to live in a place like that is either broke or has a bally screw loose.
So hard to choose which category Soseki-san would fall into. Mr. Naruhodo, that's a little rude.
He was doing research as well.
Research? Into what?
Shakespeare, of course, Shakespeare. Read a few plays of the old bard myself, you know, Romeo and Hamlet and all that.
Yes, William Shakespeare is England's most highly regarded classical playwright and author. He's also known as Sao in Japanese, as you know, and many of his works have already been translated. Did not know that. Never heard that, actually. It seems incredible that Shakespeare was shortened to Sao, though. Someone was too heavy-handed there. There were a lot of costumes in the victim's room, actually, weren't there? Of course, Mr. Natsume is a scholar of English literature as well. I imagine he and Mr. Shamspear would have had much in common. Frickin' what? Shakespeare interpretation disagreement leads to shocking murder. Let's hope it's not that. Mr. Naruhodo, really? How rude. Must have been a real shock for you this morning. I heard that you discovered what had happened.
Ah, well, that hopeless actor chap rises at 5 o'clock sharp every morning without fail. But at 5:30 this morning, he still hadn't lit the gas.
You don't have to be fancy and American about it. You can just say 6:30. At 6:30 this morning.
So I went down and knocked on his door, and no bally answer.
And that's when you broke into his room by kicking down the door.
Well, I called on that rum-looking Japanese chap to do the grunt work, of course.
Wasn't it a little premature to kick the door down? The man could have just overslept by half an hour. That's very true, Mr. Naruhodo. Also, why don't you have a key as the landlord? That's very true, Mr. Naruhodo. If 30 minutes oversleeping warranted such behavior, I'd have to kick your door down every morning.
Well, you know, better to be safe than sorry and all that.
Is it just me, or is he avoiding our gaze now all of a sudden? Except that it was a sorry situation indeed that you found on the far side of the door. You know what? Let me go check the laundry again. I shall return momentarily. So the guy who took my clothes out of the washer to put his clothes in has now taken somebody else's clothes out of the dryer so that he could use that dryer as well. I guess he's in a huge hurry. Can't sit around and wait for somebody to take their clothes out themselves. I see how it is. That's why I never do laundry. Just wear dirty clothes. Easy. After Mr. Natsume's trial yesterday, you came straight back here, I believe, didn't you? Did you notice anything strange between then and this morning?
Well, now, it must have been about 6 in the evening by the time I got home. Snow was coming down rather heavily, as I remember. It was completely dark already. That failed actor chap was out at the time.
Mr. Garrett noticed there was no light from his room or something, I suppose, through the wall of bricks. How can you see into his room?
Couldn't summon the energy for anything much, so I just sat in front of the fire up here. It was after 8 before Shamspeare got back. The chap was up till past 1 in the morning, I'll have you know. Suppose he met his end sometime after that. I was asleep by then, so I'm rather in the dark there.
Well, thank you. That was very illuminating. Is everything alright, Miss Susato? Well, I was just thinking it's a little strange, that's all. Mr. Garradeb, you were up here in your room all evening, if I've understood correctly.
Not a big fan of stairs, not with this blasted leg.
Then, how is it that you seem to know the precise movements of your tenant on the ground floor, I mean? That's a very good point. I can't imagine that you could hear noises from the ground floor all the way up here. Does this old man like to spy on his tenants? Is that it?
I say, I know what you're thinking, and it's a bally outrage. I'm ex-military, don't you know? I don't go around spying on my tenants, why would I?
Then how did you know, Mr. Garradeb?
It's the gas, woman. The gas tells me everything.
The gas? Speaking gas, what won't they think of next? What on earth do you mean, sir? How can the gas tell you anything, let alone everything?
Well, as you're probably aware, the gas is supplied to the building by pipes.
Yes, I'd more or less worked that out. Gas Wi-Fi hadn't been invented yet. Every room in the building is connected by a single pipe to the gas main outside, and the gas company supplies gas to properties via the main. Yes, I understand that too.
Let me see if I can explain. Let's say I was to light the gas lamps up here. What do you suppose would happen?
Well, obviously the room would get brighter.
Exactly, but at the same time, the lights in all the other rooms of the house would dim for a moment.
What? They dim? Why? Perhaps it's because when you light a gas lamp, it briefly uses more gas than usual. Oh, okay, we're bringing fluid dynamics into it. Okay, all right. And that reduces the amount of gas in the pipe for the other lamps that are connected to it. That might explain why the other lamps dim momentarily, mightn't it? Yes, of course, because everything's connected to a single supply pipe. Is that supposed to happen, though? It sounds rather undesirable.
Jolly good point. Fact is, the gas company's pipes in these pumps are pretty hopeless. Long worn out. Barely got any gas in them to start with. Opposite's also true, of course. Extinguish the lamps up here and they glow brighter in the rest of the house.
Right, I see. So by watching the flickering of the lamps in one room, you can determine what's happening elsewhere.
You've got it.
Oh, of course, because when people come back home in the evening and before they go to sleep at night, what they're guaranteed to do is either light or put out their lamps and fires. Clever.
Point of fact, the room on the ground floor and the one above it use slightly different amounts of gas. By watching the lights in here closely, I can work out almost exactly what's going on in the whole house.
Gosh! That's fascinating, Mr. Garradeb. Absolutely fascinating.
Well, nothing to it, really.
I can't really see that it's going to help us with the case either, said an idiot who had never played a detective game. It's called Chekhov's Gaslight. What I'd like to know is why Mr. Garradeb is so interested in what his tenants are up to in the first place. I feel like there's more to it than idle curiosity. Well, we've done as much investigating here as we can, I think. Perhaps we ought to go to the prison and speak with Mr. Natsume again. A good idea. Oh, he'll be thrilled to see us. Let me guess, a ghost did it. Also, no one is dead. This is weird. This is the second case he's been involved in where the murder victim is still alive. Look, Mr. Naruhodo. Mr. Natsume, have the police finished questioning you now?
Locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire.
Oh, yes?
What is he? Tell me. Is he a ghost? Is he here to haunt me?
Let me guess. You're talking about Mr. Sholmes? He actually calls himself a great detective, Mr. Natsume, not a ghost.
But his diabolical deductions, they're not of this world. They've left me... cursed! I'm cursed, I tell you.
Well, that sort of hurts. Credit where credit is due, Mr. Naruhodo. You were heavily involved in the deduction, too. Yes, I'm moving on. We have some wonderful news.
Oh?
The victim that we all thought was dead has come back to life again. Now, in the absolutely worst case, you could only be tried for attempted murder. That's great, isn't it, Mr. Natsume?
It's terrible. I'm stuck in this cell, suffering for some silly wrong end of the stick. You did it, didn't you? Confess, you're a killer. Why the mustache? Constant questions.
Sorry to hear that.
Ark, that selfish shyster. Make up your mind. Are you dead or alive? If you were going to come back to life, why bother dying? Wickedly wishy-washy William.
Well, it seems likely that Mr. Shamsby was never actually dead in the first place.
I guess that might make sense, and I'm pleased that he's alive, of course. A lively debate last night was much fun, and I'd be sad to think it was our last.
Oh.
Oops.
Mr. Natsume, does this mean that you did see the victim last night? You met with Mr. Shamspear, didn't you?
I'm not saying another word. I demand to have a lawyer present.
That is kind of too intelligent for somebody in a Phoenix Wright game to be saying. Who do you think I am? Please, Mr. Natsume, we need to hear your side of the story.
Ugh, why am I cursed like this?
I don't know, just because. Tell me about your cursed existence. Mr. Natsume, you often say the same thing about yourself, I've noticed. That you have a cursed existence.
I'm sure I've mentioned this to you before, but I've been here in Great Britain for a year now, and in that time I've learnt that it's no place for me.
It can be very trying to live in a foreign land and adapt to the ways of another culture.
There are foreigners everywhere I look, and they all stare at me. They all laugh. That's the impression I get whenever I go out. It makes me scared to leave my room. Which is why I've become a recluse. But even in my room I find no respite from my fears. I've moved more times than I can remember, and then 1 week ago I moved into Briar Road.
But why? I mean, why did you choose that place? It doesn't seem very comfortable.
Because the rent is cheap. I have so little money. It spoke to me.
The rent?
Obviously, there's a reason why it's cheap. Because the room is cursed.
Cursed? Cursed how?
The previous occupant, the man who lived there before I took the room, died there.
Oh no!
He was only a young man, but one morning he was found dead and no one could explain why. Surely no one would want to live in a room with a history like that. I didn't. When the letting agent recommended the place, I wavered. But I want books, and books cost money. A horrible history is a small price to pay. When I realized it would mean I could buy more books, I signed the lease like lightning. The lightning set the gas on fire and killed me.
brave, or blinkered. But after I moved in, I soon came to realize what I'd done. I realized how horrible that room's history really was. I just thought, is it going to be he wasn't poisoned at all? He was, like, suffocating because natural gas was filling the room because his candles were put out? I think that might be it. No, because he was in the room at the time. It must have been he was in the room at the time that the guy collapsed. Probably, right? Maybe. Gosh, was it really so awful? How did the room's horrible history affect you, Mr. Natsume? What happened?
At first, it was just a feeling. The feeling of beady eyes boring into my back, watching me.
Do you think that might have just been your mind playing tricks on you?
No. My mind doesn't know any tricks. It was someone else. It's been one long nightmare ever since I was given the keys to the place.
A nightmare? You've been having bad dreams, you mean?
All the souls who have died in that room lean over me in my sleep and try to strangle me.
That really is horrible.
And, now I come to think of it, it happened again last night, too. The very same night that Mr. Shamspeare was writhing in agony from the poison in his body. I was on the verge of being suffocated silently by those miserable spirits in my room.
Okay, maybe it really is. Maybe it is like a gas leak. He doesn't have a carbon monoxide detector. You simply must move out of that room as soon as possible.
Yes, you're right, I know it, and that's why. I'm already searching for the next room with a history to call home.
I think perhaps you should try to avoid accommodation with any kind of history at all. Otherwise, I'm scared that you yourself may become history. Whew, Suicidal knows how to make the man listen. Can you tell us exactly what happened last night, then, Mr. Natsume?
There's nothing to tell. But Mr. Naruhodo Esquire, I'm eternally grateful to you for helping me with that accursed case yesterday.
The case that saw poor Miss Green hospitalized after she ended up with a knife in her back. It's hard to believe that was only yesterday.
After the trial was over, I trudged my weary way back to my lowly lodgings. And that evening, at 9:30 it must have been, I visited Mr. Shamspeare.
So you did go to the victim's room, then? As we feared.
I didn't do anything wrong. I'd never been to his room before. It was the first time.
Excuse me. Then what made you decide to go?
I bumped into him when I arrived back at the house. We got chatting and it developed into a discussion. But he had to go out, so I bade him farewell.
It ties in with what Mr. Garrett said, that the victim went out and came back after 8.
We met again later that evening at around 9 or just after, when I took him some nice tea I'd brewed as a gift.
So it was you who brought the tea that had clearly been drunk at the scene, then. And I suppose you were discussing the works of Shakespeare, were you?
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. Romeo! Juliet, who was the stronger? It was a delightful debate. Such a stimulating subject, Shakespeare.
And the debate became very heated, so you slipped poison into Mr. Shamspeare's tea.
No, never. Not at all. Team Juliet won. That was me.
What light through yonder window breaks? It's Juliet. She can break windows. With her mind? Fists? Sword? All of the above. In concert. A combo attack.
The flamboyant fellow was fighting fit, I swear it. Categorically. Of course, Mr. Lord of the Manor is worried about the curse on my room as well.
You mean Mr. Garradub?
Yes, he knows that if people keep dying there, he'll never be able to rent it out again.
That's true. I, for one, wouldn't go near the place. Ah, perhaps. That may explain why the landlord pays so much attention to the gas lamps and his tenants' movements. You mean because he's worried about their well-being? What bricks through yonder window break? No, the bricks protect the window. From taxes. There must be a reason why he keeps such close tabs on the occupants of his let rooms.
What do you mean he pays so much attention to the gas lamps?
Oh dear, no, it's nothing to do with you, Mr. Natsume. Please, forget I said anything.
Oh, now you're talking about me behind my back as well.
What's important is that Mr. Shamspear isn't in fact dead at all. Once he's come round and he's able to tell us what happened, we'll be able to get you released.
Yes, please. Oh, I do hope you're right.
Excuse me.
Inspector Gregson!
No, that's me. Inspector Gregson? Couldn't help overhearing what you just said. And on that note, I have some good news and some bad news.
Oh.
Which do you want first?
Always, every time, the bad news comes first. When hope is all you have, hold on to it. That's my guiding principle.
Right, well, in that case, good news it is.
Huh?
Sorry, but it's just a lot easier to explain everything that way. Isn't that true? Every time someone says, which news do you want first, there's always a superior choice. And that only they would know.
Then why did you ask me my preference?
As you might have heard, the victim, Mr. Shamspear, was just unconscious. He's come around now. Yes, we saw it happen in all its terrifying glory. He's still being treated by the doctors, but we've managed to get a written statement from him already. Oh, isn't that wonderful, Mr. Natsume?
Thank goodness. It's all over then. I can leave this somber cell.
Sorry, no. That's not on the cards. On the cards? You mean in the cards? Why ever not, Inspector? Mr. Shamspear has implicated someone as being responsible for what happened last night. Implicated someone? Oh dear.
You don't mean?
Sorry to say I do. Yes, he's pointed the finger at you, Mr. Natsume.
Arg!
By sweet poison did he seeketh to end my life. That wickedest caitiff. Caitiff? Also, what is one of those? A base and despicable person. Caitiff? Would not have guessed that, as evidenced by the fact that I guessed twice at the pronunciation and both of them were wrong. That wickedest caitiff, Soseki Natsume. No! Oh, that was me. No! So I'm afraid you'll be appearing in court as planned. You'll be wanting to make the necessary preparations.
No!
Big no. And so, once again, Soseki-san found himself having to take the duck in the Old Bailey. Whether his room was haunted, or whether he was just terribly unlucky, I knew I had no choice. The following day, I would represent him in court and do my utmost to break the curse that blighted him. To be continued. And even though that's only 2 hours, I usually stream for 3, I keep yawning, because I am really tired, which is strange. Yeah, we'll stop here, I guess. We'll pick up tomorrow with the beginning of the trial. Still don't know why this case or the previous Clouded Kokoro case was called memoir, or was called anything to do with Clouded Kokoro, but I guess we'll find out eventually, someday. So thanks everyone for being here. I hope that you are enjoying the game. Playing more of it tomorrow. I guess I still don't have any plans on what, if any, to to stream two games alternately. Because I don't have anything else that I'm really into playing. I'll have to keep an eye out for, like, if a game comes out that it seems like I would really like. And I'm sure I have some puzzle games that I've bought and haven't played. I have a few, but I don't think I have any that are, like, really good. I'll keep an eye out, though. So thank you guys, and I will see you next time.